Hello, my name is Dean Contover, and this is Current Buzz. Today we have Roberta Witts, right? She is president and CEO of Picture Yourself. Picture Yourself is a framing shop or gallery in the center of town. It's at 17 Central
That's
Square,
correct. Thank
right?
you.
And I have her on because framing has changed over the years.
Yep.
And as far as I'm concerned, framing is an art.
Oh, thank you for that.
Yeah.
We think so as well.
Yeah, it's an art, and we have some frames here we'll explain. The big thing in framing is the glass now, right?
Well, that's one of the biggest advantages now is there's so many options. Back when I first had the shop, which was almost 40 years ago,
Wow.
there was probably 3 or 4 types of glass to use. But now we have over 12, meaning different varieties of conservation, whether it be plexiglass, whether it be conservation, regular, non-glare, and I'm going to show some of the reasons why people would want to consider those options. I feel that that's the most important thing. If it's hanging up in your home, it's being exposed to light, which is the main reason that so many things will fade or deteriorate. So to us, we stress archival materials with all our matting. We custom frame all our moldings, and for every piece. We're not too much of a ready-made off-the-rack shop.
Okay.
We are totally customized for every individual that comes through the store,
Right.
and we will give them the best advice we can.
Okay. Framing, a lot of people frame the diplomas, the college diplomas,
Absolutely.
high school diplomas.
Sure.
I haven't framed my college diploma, so it's still in the
Well,
closet.
I'll confess, I haven't framed mine either.
Yeah.
Kind of like the shoemaker's kids.
Because I don't know I don't know what to frame. I mean, what type of frame I want.
Right.
So I've
Sure.
waited all these years, and
Well,
I'm not going to get it framed, though. It's too late now.
It's never too late.
Oh,
It's
okay.
never
That's
too
a-
late. You want
that's
to
a good
preserve things.
attitude.
I mean, well, you have your diplomas, but we were talking earlier, you have like military accommodations or medals, or all those are really quite valuable to your family
Yeah,
history.
right.
Maybe not to you at this moment,
Right.
but I would say a lot of the times people are coming in with things that are generational.
Mm-hmm.
It may not be current, but they will come in with something that's meaningful to the family to preserve it and protect it, and hopefully someone else will enjoy it on their wall in years to come.
Like somebody's discharged from the military or something like
We
that.
frame a lot of those. We frame those with the photos, whether they served in the Army or Navy.
No
There
kidding.
might be a photo of a plane or a ship, or just their buddies
Right.
from wherever they were serving together.
Okay.
We frame a lot of the medals, and those are very precious. The Purple Hearts and the different commendations.
Right.
And occasionally we'll get a really large collage. For example, we were doing a lieutenant colonel that was retiring, and we must have put 20 or 30 objects into that, everything from the lapel bars and the little patches and badges and medals and some photos and things like that. And again, we're very honored to be chosen to work with those veterans that way. But what a beautiful way to commemorate all their years and years of service.
Roberta, you know what I hear from veterans? I ask them, where are your papers and pictures? Oh, they're in the basement or they're in the attic.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I tell them,
humidity, dry. If they've been folded up for a long time, as anybody may know, is when you unfold it, it could rip or tear, or, maybe at a minimum, possibly figure out you can just order some things online if you wanted to just get a protective box, a conservation box.
well, you can go to Staples and get,
I'm not sure if they have everything that's totally
I see.
archival.
Okay.
So if you're
because that's very important, archival.
Well, that's
Explain
it.
archival.
Back in the day, sometimes the mattings were made from wood pulp, and that's very acidic. These days, so you might see something that you had been framed, 40, 50 years ago, and there's sort of a brown edge around the image, or the back may even have wood, a wood panel on the back of it. And all those things put gases in the area of the frame, and it turns it into something that will cause it to deteriorate and fade out. So if by chance they could get archival papers, there's different tissues. I know that in Lowell, there's a bindery. A friend of mine just had them make a custom book bindery for all her father's military papers.
Oh, wow, I want to know that
Yeah,
place.
I wish I didn't know we were going to talk about
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
but
that's all right.
I think they're connected to Western Avenue Studios.
Oh, okay.
So if you have a big collection, you don't necessarily want a mural on your wall of all these things, but there are ways to preserve and protect these items for generations.
Can you bind it like a book? I mean, or
It was
or
a
they
series.
make
They
copies?
customized this for this client, so it was a series of folding and smaller boxes inside of a large box. But again, you'd have to contact them. I know their bindery. I don't recall their full names,
Okay.
Unfortunately, but I know they are connected to Western Avenue.
Oh, okay.
Or you can bring it to us and we'll frame it. That's another option.
Well, no, I have a lot of paper. I have a lot of my military orders, and I think a lot of people threw them away. But
Oh, dear.
I saved mine.
Yeah, good.
And I have them in protective folders.
Absolutely. Yeah.
A plastic protective.
There you go. I mean, at a minimum,
archival.
it's almost like almost like a wedding album. You have, there are different portfolios for
and
different
it's in a
kinds
binder.
of papers. Excellent.
And it's a binder. But I think that it should go public and maybe make it into a book form and send it out. But that's another story. We're not here for that.
You've got your stories.
Yeah, exactly. So if you have your papers and pictures in the attic and in the basement, take them out of the basement, put them in the closet with room temperature because your pictures will crumble because
Well,
of the
again,
contrast.
environment is really a big deal. I used to work for the National Park Service.
Okay.
And one of my first jobs was Henry Wadsworth Longfellow House in Cambridge on Brattle Street. And there was over 10,000 books there. And not including all the art and all the other artifacts that were there. And it was all, as well as they could, all environmentally controlled. We took very serious measurements of the humidity. We would oil the leather books and the bindings, and it was a continuous process. So when you go into museums or other historic buildings, you may see these little humidifier kind of measuring
Machines
devices
in the corner.
Absolutely,
And so
yeah. Or on some of the pieces of art.
Okay.
Like normally an oil painting wouldn't have any kind of a glass on it in your own home, but in a museum, they would probably use a conservation museum grade of plexi to protect the paintings, again, from the environment, from people possibly damaging it. I mean, you've seen maybe on the news how people have been throwing paint at things, which is so awful. But luckily, some of those pieces have been protected with the UV protecting.
Like the Mona Lisa.
Mona Lisa,
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
that
protected,
plus
yeah.
a couple more boxes around that, I'm sure. But we also sell those grades of museum quality
Okay,
plexi.
this is, I'm going to show you this right here.
Okay.
That
That's
is-
the needlework. And we have archival glass on that. We stretched that about 25 years ago, so it's still nice and perfect.
Beautiful, it's crisp.
Thank
I don't
you.
know if you could show it on the
color
camera.
is really nice.
Yeah.
But the important thing about that is it is not touching the fabric. The glass is raised away we have a lip underneath it that's holding a gap in there, whereas like a matting would do that and you'd see it. When you don't use a matting, it's so important that the air circulate in there so there's no mildew or anything like that. The piece that we have for the 4th of July piece, I found it at Savers, and I figured, I'll frame this, it'll be cute for the front window. And I've had that up in our window at the shop
I don't know if we could show
in the
this.
hot summer, but look at how
It's faded.
I made an error of thinking I'll just do this real quick. You can see the intensity of the needlework threads have faded quite a bit because I neglected to put
Can we get this on the camera?
a conservation glass on it. The matting stayed rich because all our mats are treated and fade resistant, but the needlework itself has faded. So if you have anything valuable, it's so important to put the better quality of glass.
Yeah, there you go. See, that's a fade, right? And
Yeah,
that's,
and well,
that's
again, that
basic glass.
Yes, and
Right.
what I really didn't take into consideration, but now I can use it as an example.
Let me show the one. Let me show the one again.
How rich the color is.
How rich
yeah.
the color is.
But
in
I
this
had that in the front window, literally leaning in the front window
Yeah.
with the sun coming across.
Right. That's what
it
you
wasn't
don't
on
do.
an inside wall.
That's
yeah.
see how crisp the colors are.
Right, and again,
Santa?
that's older than the piece that the 4th of July piece.
No kidding.
The
No kidding.
the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay, so let's talk about glass. This is the big thing in framing, is the glass now. They have museum glass now,
Yes.
too? And what's that do?
Well, there is ranging, regular glass ranges in about the 40% protection from fading. A piece of glass is used for a couple of reasons. To protect the surface from damage. If you're using a matting, you don't want anything to stain that, whether it's in your home somewhere with
Right.
fireplace smoke or a kitchen or anything that might happen, whether kids are playing. So glass is important to protect things. But then it starts getting into different levels of whether it's clear and shiny and crisp, whether we're using non-glare. For example, this piece here,
You could show it to that camera.
I chose to put a non-glare on this because I wanted it to look a little more fuzzy.
Wait up, it's glaring. You have to move it. Go ahead. See if the camera see. Yeah, okay, now you can see it a little better because it was
Oh,
the
thank
lights
you.
were flickering.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it.
Yeah,
Oh, there we go.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So inside the art, I painted this watercolor, but all over to make it look like it's raining. This is actually thread, and I threaded a matting. Like I said, it took me longer to thread the mat than to paint the painting, but I wanted the fogginess of the non-glare glass to make it appear that it is really rain. But as you can see, it does diffuse the clarity. It's not quite as crisp.
Right, right.
So, once in a while, it's good to use that type of glass, but sometimes if you want to see something super clear, I mean, this might be a better example. Both of these glass on this sample is,
Yeah, sure. Yeah, there it goes.
okay, now this is important. See how the one over here is super reflective. So this is a conservation glass. It's going to protect it equally as this, but this is museum quality, and you can see there's so much less reflection in it.
I see.
And it's a higher quality glass. Yes, it does
You have to
cost
pay
more.
for more, yeah.
But
That's
you can get
understandable.
the same protective value out of this. So say if you were putting something in a room that wasn't directly across from a bright window, et cetera, they give equal protection from fading. But this one, the clarity is just incredible.
I have a picture of Mickey Mantle, the baseball player, signed and everything, and it had regular glass, and I went out and got museum glass
Good.
put on it.
Right.
It cost
And
me a lot of
hopefully-
money. Hopefully, the
And
signature
hopefully it's
doesn't
not touching
fade.
it. Hopefully there's a
No,
mat or something.
that's a good point. If you have a picture of a wedding of your father, your grandfather, don't put the picture against the glass. Right?
Well, how many
Have it
everybody
matted.
has had that puddle of stuck glass? We get that
Yeah.
question a few times a
It
year,
sticks to the glass.
and you can't remove it safely.
Yeah, so take that picture out and get it framed so it doesn't stick to the glass and you have a little mat, right?
Right. Well, it doesn't always need to be a
Okay,
matte like
okay,
that needlework.
okay.
But this is a pastel. And again, I have the museum quality glass, so it doesn't have as much reflection
Oh,
to it.
wow, okay.
But between the glass and the art is what we call a spacer. So again, that's hidden under the lip of the frame. It's giving it an air gap. And a lot of the pastel folks used to matte them, but pastel is chalk, so
Yeah.
it would sometimes cause,
Smearing.
it would drop off and kind of you'd lose your.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, because it moves. It's chalk.
Right.
But so a lot of my pastel artists now are just putting a frame, so it almost appears to be more like an oil painting. And again, they're coming to me. They might get their own frames as artists. A lot of people are ordering them through the mail, and we have no issues with that. But they
Yeah.
do come to me to get the proper glass, and then they bring it home to put it all together because they're doing 20 pieces for a show. But that's the whole key to any photo, anything else. The glass should never be pressed right up against the art.
No, definitely not.
It
Take
needs a
that
gap.
take that photo today out of that frame that you bought in the local store and put it against the glass because it's going to ruin the picture.
Right.
And just get it matted and framed. I mean, however you
Right.
do it.
The trick
Especially
is-
wedding
Oh,
pictures.
anything that's significantly
yeah.
valuable to your family.
Right.
But sometimes it's a little more difficult then because, everybody goes and buys, the frames for, $5, $10, $20 at
Yep.
TJ Maxx and
Yep.
Marshalls.
Yep.
And they don't always have the room in the, because they might have an easel that slides in and out of it.
I
So
see.
that's kind of important to make sure if you do buy a frame that's pre-made, that there's plenty of room to put that mat in there or put that spacer in
Yeah.
there. So
These days you need a mat. I'm sorry, in regards to paintings. Oh, that's another thing. In regards to pictures, you just take it out and get it matted. And it doesn't matter whether you go to, the picture yourself stored in Central Square.
thank you.
And you could call them at 978-256-0140.
That's correct.
I got it right.
You got it good.
Yeah. So, a lot of people are getting their mats done before the holidays. I don't want to, because this might be shown later, but or
We're
or
always
in
very
May.
busy, though.
In,
I
in May, are
find-
you busy with diplomas, etc.?
Oh, of course, of course.
Yeah.
we-
What's the average price? It all depends on the size of the diploma.
Most of the high school diplomas are a similar size. They're fairly
Yeah.
small. Again, it depends if you want to do just a frame to the piece, if you want to add some matting to it, the size of it. Again, the quality of the glass that you're choosing, and we will advise folks, but we don't force anybody into anything. But I would say an average diploma might run anywhere from $85 to $150.
Okay.
If it's a bigger one like Suffolk or Boston College, those are
My daughter's Suffolk diploma is
those can be $200 to $300.
yeah, wow.
But that's
I'm not
because-
getting it framed.
But again, it's all customized. What we consider that we're making furniture. We're making a custom piece of furniture for every piece that comes in the door and leaves. It's one of a kind.
Okay, when I come into your show, I know what I want for mat
Sure.
and color and so forth, and frame or have an idea.
I know, you've been in. I know.
But what happens when somebody comes in and doesn't know what they want for a frame or metal frame versus wood frame, etc.? What do you
Well, that
advise
for-
them?
the
It's an art. It's
the
an art.
consultation
Framing
to us
is an
the
art.
fun part. Thank
Yeah.
you. Lately, just because, for health reasons and COVID, we're scheduling appointments because the average consultation could take anywhere from 15 minutes to half an hour or
Right.
more.
Okay.
And we will review all those things. Like a lot of times folks will come in with an idea of what they want. We're more than happy to show them all those things, ask them if they'd like any other suggestions. But a lot of our, we'll go through the options and pricing, and most of the time, it's something that I'm kind of familiar with. So we can make other suggestions and kind of say why maybe you don't want a white mat on your wedding photo because your dress really isn't white in the photo. It might be a shade of gray
Ivory
or
or-
pink or blue. Like in a photo, mentally you know it's white. But that white
Supposedly.
mat,
Supposedly
right,
it's
but that white mat is going to overshadow what you have inside. So when a lot of times we like to mat with a little bit of color.
Let's show this one.
So like that's sort of a paler, washed out piece. Again, that's from the 70s, and it didn't have the protective glass. But
Yeah.
by giving it a little more richness with the matting, I feel like that the art comes forward. It had an off-white mat on it, and it's so washed out. But now it gets a little more depth. So that's the part that we like to do is figure out how to best enhance the work, consider where it's going.
You know what I have at home is a lot of my pictures or artwork are framed in black because I have a white wall.
Sure.
And it stands
Well, it's a nice
out.
consistency
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's, a lot of people will, stick with a gold or stick with a black.
Right.
I even in my own home, when I have different pieces hanging in my home, I do like, you can sort of group your pieces by maybe color,
Okay.
by subject matter, maybe the style of frame around it. And I think all those things can balance quite well. Most of the time, if you're hanging a lot of art, almost like salon style, when there's like art from practically floor to ceiling, having that space in between is almost more important. It's like if I set this up, in a very nice way here, all these spaces between actually make a cohesive grouping. So it doesn't necessarily have to, everybody has to have a gold frame. I think it's how the spacing in between is almost just as important as what's surrounding.
Oh, I agree in regards to spacing in
Right.
between, because in regards to pictures, especially, military pictures of the destroyer
Sure.
or the aircraft carrier.
And then that's how
you
we-
don't want it sticking on the glass, right?
Right, right. But it's also
it.
like if we're doing a collage, we'll do a layout with multi openings in one mat.
Mm-hmm.
And, so that's that layout of all those things and how to make them more cohesive. So it's thinking about a collage mat, but maybe on your wall with individual framed items is how I, tell people to sort of think of it that way.
Right. How many types of different glass do we have now?
I have at least 12.
At least
trying,
12.
I mean,
And 20, 30 years ago, it was just one or two?
There was 2 or 3 maybe,
Yeah.
that's it. We
Wow.
just had regular non-glare, and they did slowly come in with something that was more UV protecting, but it had a slime, and not a slime, but it had like a film, and
Oh,
it
okay.
wasn't very nice. Now we have plexi and clear and non-glare and UV and museum grade, and then the Optium Museum, which again is like no reflection at all, and all the glass comes in those ways as well.
If you have something framed 20 or 30 years ago, I suggest that you get a new type of glass. You could take it out, you keep the frame
Right.
and,
Yeah, sure.
and keep the mat and just
We've
change
done
the
that
glass.
quite often. I mean,
Yeah.
if the mat has also faded, maybe we'll help you out with that.
Well, yeah.
But we have no issue if someone wants to bring in something, we consider ourselves, custom framers,
Right.
but we can customize any job that someone brings in. So if they want to reuse their frame, they want to reuse their mat, or they just want to change one or another thing or the glass, we're
Yeah.
more than happy to do
Yeah,
that.
because that's the most important thing today now is the glass, I think.
Exposure, yeah,
I
and
think.
so many people
Especially
want real,
generational.
absolutely.
If it's like wedding pictures, you want museum. I would pay, well, I mean,
All right, okay. We have a frequent buyer card, so that works out to a nice discount for everyone.
no, but I mean, in regards to wedding pictures or anything like
Yeah.
that, military pictures, okay,
I mean,
you
you-
want a
you-
good piece of glass in there.
Of course, because you don't always know if it's going to hang in that one protected space down the hallway. At some point you may be moving it around and doing things like that with the different
Yeah.
artwork. But that's in the eye of the beholder. We're we just give the best advice we can. But
Right.
obviously, the client is making the final decision.
Remember, if you want something framed and you're living in an apartment, just remember you're going to be moving to a house maybe someday, and you might want.
Well, now
you know.
and now the houses, everybody wants all that light and big windows, and that
Yeah.
does affect what you have in your home.
Keep your pictures and your paintings away from the sun, to protect it in general. Am
Yeah,
I
well,
right?
there you go.
Yeah.
That needlework I had in the front window, every June, July, I had that right in direct sunlight, right in the center. And it was a very powerful sun that cut through that day.
Do they put gas in argon or something? Somebody told me between the glass and the picture now, or do they?
I don't.
Okay. I mean,
I
yeah,
mean,
it's
there might
real
be-
technical stuff. I would presume.
Yeah. I'm a custom framer in Chelmsford, for 40 years.
That's right. At 17 Central Square.
You got it. Hopefully we'll be there a bit longer
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
But I would assume in the museums and things they have way more advanced,
Yeah.
ways
Stuff.
of protecting the
Yeah.
art. But again, it's that's why they're.
Why I have you on is I want people to protect their pictures and their artwork and their diplomas.
Thank you.
And the glass is super important now,
Right.
because a lot of people don't know 20, 30 years ago they got it
Right.
framed, and now the glass has changed and it protects.
Right.
UV
And-
protection. It's like UV windows in your house. You change it from a regular glass to UV windows. That's a big difference.
Oh,
now.
sure, your couch
Yeah.
won't fade, your fabrics, your
Yeah, good
your
point.
wallpaper, things like that. I mean, and the other thing though is in our gallery, we only use archival matting. Again, if the matting is more than 15, 20 years old.
Good point.
It was the paper and the wood pulp, and again that has the different gases. So our backers are either rag or conservation quality.